Tom Heaton noticed the smell first. Standing at his brother's graveside, as the last mourners drifted away across the cemetery, he caught a whiff of something that didn't belong. Not the sweet fragrance of fresh flowers or the earthy scent of newly turned soil. This was different, wrong, decay, putrid and insistent. "You coming?" Sarah asked, touching his arm. His wife's eyes were rimmed red, her face pale. She'd loved Michael almost as much as Tom had. "Just give me a minute," he said. Sarah nodded and walked toward their car, leaving Tom alone beside the mound of dirt that covered his younger brother. The smell grew stronger. Tom wrinkled his nose, looking around for the source. The cemetery was empty now, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. Nothing seemed out of place, except for the dirt on Michael's grave. It was moving. Tom blinked, certain he was seeing things. Grief could do that to you, make you hallucinate, see the impossible. But the soil continued to shift, particles rising and falling, as if something underneath was pushing upward. "Jesus Christ," Tom whispered, taking a step back. A hand, grey, bloated, with rotting flesh hanging from yellowed bone, burst through the soil, fingers clawing at the air. Tom's legs gave way. He fell backward onto the grass, scrambling away as a second hand emerged, then shoulders, then a head. His brother's head, or what remained of it. Michael's face was partially decomposed, one eye socket empty, the other containing a milky orb that swiveled until it fixed on Tom. The thing that had been Michael opened its mouth. No sound came out, but a fresh wave of stench did, so powerful Tom gagged. "Michael!" he choked out. The creature pulled itself free of the grave, dirt cascading from its funeral suit. It moved with jerky, uncoordinated motions, like a marionette with tangled strings. Its hollow gaze never left Tom. From somewhere behind him, Sarah screamed. Tom turned to see her standing by their car, hands pressed to her mouth in horror. But she wasn't looking at Michael. She was looking past Tom, toward the rest of the cemetery. Other graves were moving, dozens of them, mounds of earth shifting as the dead clawed their way back to the world of the living. "Tom!" Sarah cried. "Run!" He scrambled to his feet just as Michael's cold, rotting hand closed around his ankle. Part 2. Marshfield had always been a quiet town, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where you could leave your door unlocked at night without fear. Tom had grown up here, left for college, then returned with Sarah when city life became too much. Michael had never left. Now, as Tom drove frantically through the streets with Sarah beside him, that peaceful town was transforming before their eyes. They weren't the only ones fleeing the cemetery. Other cars sped past, drivers wild-eyed with panic. People ran along sidewalks, looking back over their shoulders, and moving among them, slowly but relentlessly, were the dead. "Call 911, Tom said, tossing his phone to Sarah. She tried, hands shaking. "It's not going through. Network's jammed." Through the windshield, Tom watched an elderly woman backing away from what had once been a man in a postal worker's uniform. The corpse's skin hung in ribbons, but it still wore the blue cap, now stained with dirt and what looked like dried blood. The dead mailman lunged, gripping the woman's shoulders. She screamed as teeth, blackened but still sharp, tore into her neck. "Oh God," Sarah moaned, turning away from the window. Tom swerved, nearly hitting a teenage boy who darted across the road. In his rearview mirror, he saw the kid collide with a shambling corpse. They fell together, the boy's screams cutting off as rotting hands dragged him into a growing crowd of the dead. "We need to get home," Tom said, knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Barricade the doors, call for help." Sarah nodded, her face ashen. "What about your parents?" "They're across town." Tom's stomach clenched. His mother and father lived in the same house where he'd grown up, on the far side of Marshfield. To reach them, they'd have to drive through the center of town. "We'll call them when we get home," he said, knowing his words rang hollow. Main Street was chaos. Abandoned cars blocked intersections. People ran in all directions, pursued by staggering, decomposing figures. Some of the dead were fresh, recently buried, their bodies mostly intact. Others were little more than skeletons held together by scraps of rotted flesh and sinew. All of them had the same hollow eyes. Empty. Hungry. Tom took a sharp turn down a side street, hoping for a clearer path. Instead, they found themselves facing a crowd of the dead, surrounding something on the ground, something that still moved and screamed. "Tom, don't look," Sarah said. But it was too late. The creatures were feeding, tearing at living flesh with broken teeth and jagged fingernails. Blood darkened the asphalt. Tom reversed, tires squealing. Several of the corpses looked up, hollow eyes fixing on the car. As one, they began to move toward the new prey. "They're faster than they look," Sarah whispered. She was right. Despite their jerky, uncoordinated movements, the dead covered ground with terrible efficiency. Their rotting legs never tired, their decayed lungs needed no oxygen. Tom floored the accelerator, swerving around the shuffling group. In the mirror, he saw them change direction, still pursuing but already falling behind. 3 blocks from home, they hit a corpse that stepped into the road. The impact sent it tumbling over the hood, cracking the windshield before the body rolled off. "Keep going," Sarah cried. Tom didn't need to be told twice. Their house was in sight now, a 2-story colonial on a quiet cul-de-sac, or what had been a quiet cul-de-sac. Even here, chaos had arrived. 2 houses down, flames licked from broken windows. Somewhere, a car alarm wailed. He screeched into their driveway, and they bolted from the car to the front door. Sarah fumbled with her keys while Tom kept watch, heart hammering, as he spotted movement at the end of the street. "Hurry," he breathed. The lock clicked. They tumbled inside, slamming the door behind them. Part 3. For a moment, the sudden silence felt like safety. Their living room with its familiar furniture and family photos seemed impossibly normal. Sarah leaned against the door, chest heaving. Tom moved from window to window, pulling curtains closed. "Phone," he said. "Try the landline." Sarah crossed to the kitchen, returning seconds later with the cordless handset pressed to her ear. "Dead. No dial tone." Tom swore. "Internet?" He pulled out his phone, but both cellular data and Wi-Fi showed no connection. Whatever was happening, it had taken down the communications infrastructure. "Television," Sarah suggested. The flat screen on the wall came to life with static. Tom changed channels frantically, finding the same on each. Finally, one station showed a news studio. Empty chairs behind the desk, papers scattered on the floor, a single red light indicating the camera was still rolling. "What the hell is going on?" Sarah whispered. A crash from outside made them both jump. Through a gap in the curtains, Tom saw their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Winters, stumbling up her front steps, pursued by what had once been a young woman in jogging clothes. The corpse's blonde ponytail swung as it grabbed Mrs. Winters, pulling her backward down the steps. Her scream cut through the closed windows. Tom turned away, bile rising in his throat. "We need weapons. Something to defend ourselves." They searched the house, gathering anything that might help. Kitchen knives, a heavy flashlight, the baseball bat Tom kept by the bed. It didn't feel like enough. "The radio," Sarah said suddenly. "Your old emergency radio." Tom nodded, remembering the hand crank model he'd bought years ago during hurricane season. He retrieved it from the hall closet, set it on the coffee table, and began turning the handle to generate power. Static hissed from the speaker as he cycled through frequencies. Finally, a voice broke through, distorted but understandable. "Repeat, this is an emergency broadcast. The dead are rising across the eastern seaboard. Cause unknown. Military response underway but overwhelmed. Citizens should shelter in place, barricade all entries, avoid contact with infected corpses. If bitten or injured by the infected, isolation is mandatory. The turning process begins within hours of exposure." Sarah clutched Tom's arm. "Turning process? What does that mean?" Before Tom could answer, a heavy thud shook the front door. Then another. Something, was trying to get in. They backed away, Tom gripping the baseball bat so tightly his knuckles whitened. Through the door's decorative window, a face appeared. Grey skin stretched tight over protruding bones, empty eye sockets, teeth bared in a rictus grin. "The back door," Tom said. "Make sure it's secure." Sarah moved toward the kitchen as the pounding intensified. Glass cracked as more figures pressed against the windows. "Tom!" Sarah's voice was tight with fear. "There's someone in the backyard." He joined her at the kitchen window. A man stood on their patio, not one of the dead, but living. Blood streaked his face, and he clutched his right arm, which hung at an unnatural angle. "Help me!" the man shouted, seeing them. "Please!" Behind him, emerging from the woods that bordered their property, came 3 shambling corpses. "We can't," Sarah said. "We can't let him in. What if he's infected?" Tom looked at the man's desperate face, then at the approaching dead. "We can't leave him out there either." Before Sarah could argue, he unlocked the back door and yanked it open. "Quick!" he shouted. The man staggered forward as Tom beckoned frantically. Behind him, the corpses picked up speed, hollow eyes fixed on their prey. The injured man was halfway to the door when he stumbled, falling to his knees. In an instant, the lead corpse was on him, decomposed hands gripping his shoulders, rotten teeth sinking into his neck. The man's scream became a gurgling cry. "Tom, close the door!" Sarah pulled at his arm. He couldn't move, horror rooting him to the spot as the other corpses joined the first, tearing at the fallen man with mindless hunger. Sarah reached past him, slamming the door shut and turning the lock. She pulled the kitchen curtains closed, but not before Tom saw the man's eyes open again. The light in them extinguished, replaced by the same hollow emptiness that marked all the walking dead. Part 4. Night fell. Tom and Sarah huddled in their bedroom, the door barricaded with a dresser. Outside, the sounds of destruction continued, breaking glass, car alarms, occasional screams that dwindled as the hours passed. The dead were growing in number. Through gaps in the boards they'd nailed over the windows, they caught glimpses of their neighborhood transformed. Corpses wandered the streets, sometimes alone, sometimes in packs. Some were clearly fresh, residents of Marshfield who had fallen that day. Others were in various states of decay, from funeral home fresh to barely held together. All had the same hollow eyes. All moved with the same relentless purpose. "We can't stay here," Sarah whispered. "Food will run out. And if they break in..." Tom nodded grimly. The house wouldn't hold forever. Already, the front door was splintering under constant assault. The windows downstairs, despite being boarded up, wouldn't withstand determined force for long. "The car's still in the driveway," he said, "if we can reach it." "And go where?" Sarah asked. Tom had been thinking about that. The emergency broadcast had mentioned military response, which meant there had to be safe zones somewhere. "West," he decided. Away from the coast, the broadcast said the eastern seaboard was hit. Maybe it hasn't spread inland. Sarah looked unconvinced, but nodded. When? Dawn, Tom said. They seem more active at night. Maybe we'll have a better chance in daylight. They gathered supplies into backpacks, food, water, first aid kit, the few weapons they had. The plan was simple. Break for the car at first light. Drive west until they found help or a safe place to hole up. As the first grey light of morning seeped through the boarded windows, they stood at the top of the stairs, listening. The pounding at the front door had stopped. Ready? Tom whispered. Sarah nodded, gripping a kitchen knife in one trembling hand. They crept downstairs, wincing at every creak of the steps. The living room was intact, but showed signs of attempted entry. Splintered wood around the windows, the front door hanging askew on broken hinges. Through a gap in the boards, Tom peered outside. The street was quieter now, with fewer walking corpses visible. Those he could see moved sluggishly, as if the daylight slowed them. Now, he said, before more come. They slipped out the back door, moving quickly but quietly across the yard to the side of the house. Tom paused at the corner, checking the driveway. Clear. The car sat where they'd left it, untouched. Sarah clutched his arm. Tom, she whispered, pointing. At the end of the driveway stood a figure in a dirty funeral suit. Michael, or what remained of him. One milky eye fixed on them, the other socket dark and empty. His skin had declined further overnight, now hanging in loose, rotting sheets from exposed bone. Go around, Tom breathed. Passenger side, I'll get the driver's door. They edged forward. Michael didn't move, but his hollow gaze followed them. 10 feet from the car, Tom heard a sound that made his blood freeze. A low, rattling moan from behind them. He turned to see their next-door neighbor, Mr. Collins, shambling around the corner of the house. In life, Collins had been a big man. In death, he was terrifying. 6.5 feet of decomposing flesh, moving with surprising speed toward Sarah. Run! Tom shouted. They sprinted for the car. Tom fumbled the keys from his pocket as Sarah reached the passenger door. Behind them, Collins gained ground, joined now by Michael and 2 other corpses attracted by the noise. The key found the lock. Tom wrenched the door open and threw himself behind the wheel as Sarah scrambled in beside him. Colin's rotting face appeared at the window as Tom turned the key in the ignition. Nothing happened. No, Tom muttered, trying again. The starter clicked weakly. The battery was dying. Collins pounded on the window, the glass beginning to crack. More corpses surrounded the car, their hollow eyes staring, hands clawing at the metal. Tom! Sarah screamed as the driver's window gave way, Collins' decaying fingers pushing through. Tom tried the ignition one last time. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. He slammed the car into reverse, the sudden movement dislodging Collins, who fell back. Tires squealed as Tom backed down the driveway, corpses stumbling after them. He shifted into drive and floored the accelerator, swerving around the walking dead that filled the street. Looking back, he saw Michael standing in the middle of the road, that one milky eye still fixed on the car, watching his brother escape. We made it, Sarah said, her voice shaking. But as they reached the end of their street, the true scale of the disaster became clear. The main road was choked with abandoned vehicles. Corpses wandered between them, hollow-eyed and hungry. There was no clear path through. And beyond, the town of Marshfield burned, black smoke rising into the morning sky, while the dead claimed the streets, growing in number with each passing hour. The hollow men were taking over, and the living were running out of places to hide. Tom gripped the steering wheel, eyes scanning for any route of escape. Sarah reached over, her hand finding his. "What now?" she asked quietly. Before Tom could answer, something heavy hit the back of the car. In the rearview mirror, hollow eyes stared back at him. The dead had found them again. They always would. 3 days later, a military helicopter flew over what remained of Marshfield. Through high-powered lenses, the pilot saw what had become of the once peaceful town. Streets filled with shuffling corpses, buildings burned or abandoned, no signs of surviving human life. He reported back to the shrinking perimeter of government control, another town lost to the Hollow Men. Further west, the military still held some ground, protecting pockets of survivors behind hastily constructed walls and barricades. But everyone knew it was only a matter of time. The dead kept coming, their numbers growing as the ranks of the living dwindled. And each new corpse that rose had the same hollow eyes, empty of everything except hunger and the relentless drive to spread their condition to the living. Among the walking dead that roamed Marshfield streets was a man still wearing the tattered remains of a leather jacket. If anyone had been close enough to read the driver's license in his pocket and lived to tell about it, they would have identified him as Thomas Heaton. Next to him walked a woman, her once beautiful face now grey and partially decomposed. Her hollow eyes matched his as they moved together through the ruined town, searching for prey, driven by instincts they no longer understood. Behind them, others followed, a growing army of the dead, connected by their shared emptiness. The Hollow Men had won this battle. Soon they would win the war, and somewhere beneath the surface of their rotting brains, trapped in endless darkness, the last fragments of human consciousness screamed in eternal horror.